Rise of the Pyramid Lobby. While many people are somewhat aware of large lobbying forces in Washington, such as Big Tobacco, the gun lobby, and Big Pharma, few know of the existence of the Pyramid Lobby, a spectacularly successful influence buying and propaganda machine that has been able to extend to over 100 countries, including in its sphere a President of the United States, a former MLM spokesman, and namesake promoter, Donald Trump. Historical insight into the formation of the Pyramid Lobby begins more than 40 years ago with the dubious honor that Amway owners were given at the highest level of government, even while the company was being prosecuted by the FTC. The incident shows that well before the FTC strangely capitulated to Judge Timoney's exoneration of Amway in 1979, the foundation of the Pyramid Lobby had already been laid and was exerting its formidable power over law enforcement. Even while the FTC prosecution was underway, Amway's founders were invited guests to the White House. As Amway was engaged in continuous procedural delays against the FTC staff attorneys, it was simultaneously in direct communication with President Gerald Ford, a personal friend, political patron, funding recipient, and former congressional representative of the district where Amway is based. Amway heavily funded Ford's museum and presidential library. Ford was even the keynote speaker at the opening of the Amway Hotel in Grand Rapids. In 1975, the time of the filing of the prosecution, it was the last days of the scandal-plagued Nixon presidency. Amway founders already had a powerful political base in Michigan, strong ties to Congress, and equally strong ties to the presidency. Amway was capable of influencing large numbers of votes in Michigan and beyond. The Washington Post reported DeVos's and Van Andel's rise to prominence in Washington after Ford became president. This was between 1974 and 1976, while FTC staff attorneys were vainly pursuing a pyramid scheme case against Amway after Nixon resigned. The Washington Post further reported the extraordinary connections Amway had inside the White House. Quote, in 1975, when Amway came under a Federal Trade Commission investigation as an alleged pyramid scheme, Van Andel and DeVos had a 43-minute Oval Office visit with Ford. A month later, after the private meeting with President Ford, Van Andel was quoted in a Michigan newspaper as saying that Ford was aware of Amway's troubles with the FTC. Later, Warren Rustand, director of Ford's scheduling office, and William Nicholson, his assistant, were listed as stockholders in a Nebraska insurance company being formed by Van Andel and DeVos. Nicholson was later hired in Amway's government affairs office. It cannot be proven that Amway's political power base improperly influenced the FTC's decision to accept Judge Timoney's ruling. However, the reality of Amway's politically protected status cannot be denied in the years immediately after the FTC ruling as Ronald Reagan took office. The Pyramid Lobby was growing in size to protect Amway from any review by the FTC, and the protection would expand to cover the growing number of new MLMs, including Herbalife, that launched in 1981. The Washington Post reported that Amway's DeVos and Van Andel were, quote, regulars at Reagan White House events, noting one formal event they were invited to attend to honor a head of state, even while Canada was trying to extradite them for tax fraud. In 1981, Just after the FTC dropped its charges of pyramid fraud against Amway, Washington's elite assembled in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at the gala for the opening of the $7.1 million Gerald R. Ford Museum. Guests included President and Mrs. Reagan, Chairman of the FTC, Caspar Weinberger, Vice President George H.W. Bush, former Secretary of State Henry A. Kissinger, and top leaders of Canada, France, and Mexico. Quietly seated among these political powerhouses were the event's underwriters, Amway's founders, DeVos and Van Andel. The Washington Post reported the two were at the same table with Alexander Haig, who was the U.S. Secretary of State to President Ronald Reagan. Previously, Haig served as Nixon's chief of staff during the tumultuous Watergate period and retained the job when Ford took office. About a year after the formal dinner for dignitaries in Grand Rapids, Haig joined Amway as paid consultant to aid its international expansion. The amazing feat of Amway's moving in less than 3 years from the prosecution for pyramid fraud and Canadian arrest warrants for massive tax evasion to the pinnacle of American politics can be understood only by a closer look at the events and politics around that famous FTC case, a pivotal event in the untold story of multi-level marketing. The forces that shaped the event reveal how and why MLM is with us now.